excellent question. So the question is very difficult to answer because in many ways I have kept many of them, but some closer than others. So I would say that I have probably 3 very close mentors. And one of them is Grace McCumsey, who is the one who really scientifically helped provide me the opportunity to do this work in HIV and cardiovascular disease. But also Dan Simon, who is the cardiologist, who from a career standpoint, even though he doesn't do anything in HIV, he doesn't know hardly anything about HIV, he's a cardiologist and he's very much knowledgeable about the pitfalls of academic medicine and how do you progress through an academic career. So having him. And then Bob Salata, who is really someone who has built the relationship of Case Western with various Ugandan institutions, such as Makerere University, the Joint Clinical Research Center. And I've seen, his work and how he interacts here, and in many ways I still consider him a very close mentor. So I would say having a core mentorship group of maybe 3 or 4 very important mentors, a scientific mentor, a career mentor, maybe someone who's a combination of both. I think that's a good number. Ultimately you can't have too many, or else you're just very diffuse. So you have to, or else you don't have enough strong relationships with any one of them. So I think it's important to cultivate a core group, and for me that number is probably 3. But there are a number of others in kind of maybe 6 or 7 others that are in that closer circle who I can go to in any specific situation. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Were any of these mentors ever chosen for you, or you made the choice yourself?
Great question. So yes, they were chosen for me, some were, but very few. So I would say the one that's the best example is Mike Schlipak. So you probably don't remember, he was the guy from UCSF who helped me with my writing. I was interested in cardiovascular disease, and he was a kidney guy. But he did HIV stuff, and the program director for the PRIME program, which I guess may be in some ways similar to Nurture in a way that there was kind of a director and then they helped hook you up with mentors. He basically said, I think Mike Schlipak's the guy for you. He set up the meeting and then said, ultimately if it would not have worked out, I could have left the relationship, but he was chosen for me. It was kind of assigned to him. It worked out. I'm trying to think, is there an example of a mentor who I was assigned to where it didn't work out? I can't think of someone right offhand, but if I thought a little bit longer, I might be able to, so I'll let you know. Do you get assigned mentors a lot, would you say, or do you feel like you have the opportunity to seek out mentorship?
We do have opportunity, but with increasing numbers of students, I find that sometimes you have to assign. Otherwise, people may tend to aggregate towards the one person, and then without all the people, and yet the workload that comes with doing this is.
Yeah, have you, as an early career faculty person, been given students who are assigned to you to mentor? And then we can throw this up, it doesn't have to be you, but anybody.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have been lucky, the systems in which I work, I've actually always been able to choose my student mentors as well. So I do think that that's a frustrating experience for both mentor and mentee if the match is not good.
You say you choose your student mentee. How do you choose your student mentees?
Well, they choose me to start, but then I have to choose them back, right? But like I said, the way it works really in the American system is that the students, they seek you out. They say, "Hi, Dr. Longenecker, I listened to this talk that you gave, I'm really interested in what you do. This is a little bit about me. Would you be willing to sit down with me and talk a little bit about what I want to do?" And then we have like a little date, and we can decide whether or not it works or not. So I have to say yes. Now, I would say that I probably get requests like that from both undergraduates, because in the United States we have two parts of our medical education. We have undergraduate, and then we have medical school. And so 8 years total before we graduate from medical school. So I have people who are in their first 4 years, those undergraduates who are asking me to work in my lab, even though I don't really have a lab. They say that anyway, and they give me this history of working with mice and this and that. And I'm like, I almost always answer the email, but I say, "I'm sorry, I have, I'm full, or I don't have a specific opportunity for you." So I have to turn down a lot of those types of students. But then there's a fair number that I interview, that meet with me, and we may do one little thing. It's more like a test project to see if we get along. And if that works out, then I may give them other projects and then help develop a deeper relationship. Does that happen here in Uganda?
Some of the very things that you have to work with what you have. You want to work with what you have.
Yeah.
Because if you reject them, then probably the thing that where would they go?
Yeah, I think that for me it was sometimes difficult for me to learn how to say no, but then I learned how to do it better. Ultimately, people will find the match that works for them, or they won't be successful. Many people in medicine in the United States stay and practice clinical medicine. Certainly much more lucrative for them to do so than to have a research career. So there's only a very small amount of people that ultimately end up in a research career. And for me, I don't want to mentor a student who just wants to have a research experience so that they can publish a paper, so that they can get into some fancy fellowship, right? And ultimately never do any research after that. I want to have a relationship with someone that I could potentially help develop into an academic who is committed to both investigation, but also education and all the other things that go with being an academic clinician. I think you in the Nurture program, that's probably, or hopefully, applies to all of you as well. So I think at some point you have to learn how to direct your mentoring efforts towards people that you really see as developing into something.
Well, if truth be told, the concept of a mentor in this environment is not well understood. Both from people who should be mentors and those who should be. And so it is a bit of a hard sell. Many people think they don't need mentors. Mentors are not. Yeah.
When you say in this context, are you talking specifically about Uganda or generally?
Well, it's Uganda and even more generally in the region. Even in this room.
So that's important. Trade in a mentor is straight talk. I mean, I think that that's absolutely true. I'd say it happens in the United States as well. But we have to take a hard look at these things and be able to look at ourselves and say, look, I can't do this on my own, and I need to seek out mentorship. I think I've actually probably suffered from that at times, personally, and in my relationships with some mentors, and so it's a learning process of finding that balance.
The reason that confusion sometimes arises is because we also have a system of where students may have supervisors, especially if they're the postgraduate or PhD level. And then when you assign them someone else who is a mentor, then they struggle in identifying what roles each of them should be doing.
Yeah. I think I can understand a little bit, maybe in my context, the place where that sometimes comes up is that I, as a physician in an academic medical center, have a chief. So that relationship with my chief is not chosen. And I have to have some sort of relationship with them, and they're reviewing my performance and giving me feedback, and I don't choose them. But then I have other mentors, and I have to figure out what is the role, and whether one gives one advice and the other one gives contradictory advice. How do I balance that? But yeah, so balancing the advice that you get from chosen mentors versus assigned mentors is difficult. I think ultimately you have to work within the system in which you exist, and learning how to navigate that is it's part of developing kind of your emotional intelligence and savviness with navigating a career. So if that answers your question. So hopefully everyone read this paper, but just to review, the authors argue that we talk a lot about the good, what makes a good mentor, what makes a good mentee, but sometimes we have to call out what makes a bad mentor. And the authors of this paper acknowledge that many of these things they recognize in themselves. And so I think these are all traits of human beings, honestly, right? And so, but they can be very detrimental for the mentee's success. And so I think they have to be recognized when they are happening. So there are three forms of active mentorship malpractice that they describe, and three more subtle passive forms. And so the three active forms are the hijacker, where basically you have a mentor who is using the mentee and taking credit for things that the mentee may do, and obviously that impedes the mentee's success. The hijacker, the exploiter is asking the mentee to do things that are basically just self-serving. They need something that's really not a valuable task to be done, and they just keep assigning the mentee to do these menial tasks that are really not for any purpose. Now, occasionally, of course, there's going to be very mundane activities as part of research, but those mundane activities should have some purpose. And the exploiter basically is not giving those sorts of activities, but rather activities that are worthless to the mentee. Whereas the possessor then may feel like they want the mentee all to themselves and are not willing to let the mentee explore having other mentors as well, and so they end up hampering the mentee's success in that way. Now, the other three phenotypes, I certainly identify with some of them. I gave you an example of the bottleneck. So this is where a mentor is maybe too busy with their own tasks and projects, and so when the mentee asks to meet with them, they never have time in their schedule. If they send them a paper for feedback, it takes them a long time to get that back. So that's the bottleneck. The country clubber is a conflict avoiding type situation where the mentor is not willing to go to bat for the mentee. For example, if the mentee has an issue that needs a mentor to kind of advocate for them, the country clubber is someone who doesn't want to do that, who just wants to be friends with everybody. The world traveler is also maybe something that applies to me, someone who is never around, and so it's just very hard to connect with them. Maybe they're so successful in their own career that they're being asked to travel all around the world and give talks, and so they're not a very good mentor to those on the ground here at home. So I think many of you may identify with some of these, and I think it's important for us to recognize that we all probably have some of these things in our own practice.